Hello and welcome to the Product Experience. This week, Randy and I caught up with Keiji Adedeji. She's a product leadership coach and consultant, and we talked all about the annoying things that companies do and why they do them. Happy New Year!
Keiji, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing?
I'm great, thank you. Nice to see you, Randy, and nice to see you, Lily.
So, we've known you for years. We've been trying to get you to come on for years. It's great to finally have you. But for people who don't know you already, can you just give us a quick intro? How did you get into product in the first place, and what kind of stuff do you do these days?
Okay, sure. I'm Keiji Adedeji. I've been a product person for, about 13 years now, but I've probably worked in tech for about 18 years. My route into products is probably not that dissimilar to a lot of people. I think certainly our generation's route into products. I wore pretty much every other hat you could wear in a tech organization. I started off as a software tester. I did that for a while. And then I was like, I'm bored of this. I need more. And so I asked the company I was working for to give me more. And they said, okay, you can go off and be a software tester in this team, but in this team, you get to wear lots of other hats. So I did business analysis, project management, implementation. I used to go on site and train the customers. I used to go out and gather requirements and all of that. And then I realized the thing I really thought I might be interested in doing is a thing that the developer who started the team was doing. So he pitched the idea to business. They gave him a bunch of money and said, set up a team and go and make that thing become reality. So he had the problem to solve. He went off and figured out if it was really a problem, if customers had a problem to solve, if it was going to be valuable. And then he put a team together and then we built that product, etc. I was like, I want to do what he does, except the coding bit. And I think I might have actually Googled it. I think they gave me the job title of product consultant at the time, which didn't mean anything. And so I was like, what's a product consultant? And then they were like, Google was like, it's a product manager. And so that's how I discovered product management and decided that's what I was going to go off and do. And I've been doing it ever since. So I've worked in primarily B2B companies. I spent a lot of my time in edtech for a company called Talis, two times around. I've worked at big organizations, small organizations. I've worked at National Express. My last stint was at the FT, but I've also worked in small startup and scale up environments. And currently I'm doing a little bit of product consulting with the International Baccalaureate Organization. And that's me.
Fantastic. So, with all of that experience, of having seen lots of different things, you've got war stories. You've seen some absolutely insane things that companies have done. And we were talking early and realized that there's a common element to some of this craziness. Why are big companies stupid? That's probably
Well, I think you've probably said it a bit more diplomatically than I said it when we were talking about it earlier.
you
Yes,
can
on
say
my
it your
list,
way. It's okay.
I can say it my way. So when we were talking about what I was going to talk about, and I didn't really have a topic per se, but I then shared a document I had started many years ago that was titled "The Batshit Cray Cray Things That Big Companies Do," and had a set of examples in there. And really, ultimately, underneath all the things on that list was, for me, I think, the illusion of control that companies have, that ultimately boils down to a lack of trust permeating through the organization in various ways, either through the culture or either through the need to control outcomes, but kind of not really having a language for outcomes. It sometimes can come from failures, and then an organization becomes afraid of failure and therefore kind of locks down on trust and control, and therefore craziness abounds in many
Okay.
ways.
We need to get into the serious side of this, but when you introduce it as the batshit cray cray things that companies do, please give us an example before we go into the serious stuff.
Okay. One of my favorite examples of this is I was working with a team and they'd, as often many teams have done, they've come across Spotify's squad model. They're like, this is great. We're going to adopt this without really getting it. And so they'd adopted Spotify squads and they were doing a good job of kind of their transformation, but with a lot to learn. And so they were doing agile and all the teams were working in an agile way. They had a, Kanban board and it was all on the wall so everyone could see. And so when, a developer finishes a story, they'd get up and they'd go and move a piece of card from, this stage to that stage. And that's the way it was done. And then they tell a project manager that that had happened, and then the project manager would move it on Jira. Yeah. And I was like, hold up, hang on a minute, what's going on here? Oh, no, no, that's the way we have to do it. So, because, the project managers are the ones who make sure that everything is showing in the right stage and the right status. And so, kind of, if anyone's doing the reporting, it's all right. We're not allowed to move the Jira cards. And I was just like, "But I don't understand." So I went to talk to the project manager. "Why is this happening?" "Well, we've got to do a bunch of reporting on this. And sometimes people, developers do the thing, but they forget to move it." I'm like, "But they could forget to move it on the physical board." Like, I don't really understand, but no one could really get to the answer for this. So I went round the houses just trying to help people see that this was, batshit cray, and couldn't quite get the message across. And in the end, the way that I got the message across was, these developers are building software, solving customer problems with you, the team, and you trust them to hit ship, right? At some point, they're done with that software, they finish that software, everyone's like, yep, it solves the problem, and then you trust them to hit ship. Now, if anything goes wrong with that, we literally can see the money, not like the money failing. If they fuck that up, no money's happening. We will literally see that happening. So if you can trust them to do that, how can you not trust them to move a Jira card on a Jira board? And you force them to stand up and move it on a physical board and then tell another human who will then move it on a Jira board. Can you not see how A, crazy that is, and B, how demoralizing that is, and how that breeds a lack of trust in a team? So that's just one example of kind of what I thought was just a crazy thing to be happening. But somewhere underneath that, you have to kind of like really try and delve into like what's really going on underneath this thing. Why are we so afraid that something won't be updated? What's the real impact of that? And in the end, it comes down to the fact that there's a bunch of reporting that happens regularly by the PMOs, the project managers. They have to do this reporting to help kind of the higher ups understand what the status of things are. And I think somewhere along the line, they've been burnt in the past because something was reported wrong or someone hasn't had the information they needed, and so they locked everything down. Jira was locked down for the people who were actually working with doing the work. And so it's kind of unpicking why that was a problem, and helping people kind of realize that it's okay if like we get an update wrong. What's more important is we ship the right thing, and then we trust our people, and we kind of give them that trust and allow them to get on with their job rather than fearing for getting things wrong. Again, it's that kind of fear of failure, that fear of trust that kind of is seeping in there. Underneath a crazy thing like that is always going to be a real reason why humans are afraid of something. So it's going to be something that's happened in the past, right?
I think the other thing that is really striking about that story is, well, there's a few things for me, but the fact that they are reporting on the tickets being moved on the board.
Exactly.
And, that's another level, like you say, of lack of trust, or like someone is not convinced that the team are being productive, obviously, and they want to know what tickets are being moved across the board on a daily basis so that they can measure that and probably use it as a productivity measure or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
And yeah, again, very sort of controlling and very, if that means that we're making progress, not looking at the outcome
Yeah,
of
the
the work
outcome.
that's being delivered.
Exactly. It's like all of the cards could be in the right place and you're reporting fine, but they shipped that thing and the website broke and therefore we lost millions in a day. What's more important at the end of the day? Yeah.
The other thing that I find just so funny about that story is I remember as well having boards up on walls in offices and, doing the physical movement of like moving something from one sort of status to the next. But I just can't imagine working. There's no one working like that now. Everyone must be working virtually, surely.
Yeah, I think certainly since the pandemic, with teams becoming, I know there is definitely a movement to kind of let's all go back to the office, but I think most teams are probably some form of hybrid now. So yeah, surely physical boards are a thing of the past. I can't imagine that team still got a physical board. I'd be really interested to know if that organization's still doing that.
So what's another one of your examples of, the crazy
Ooh,
things big
yes,
organizations do?
I mean, I've got a bit of a frivolous one that isn't I'm not really sure that I have an explanation for it, but I found this one quite funny, and this is the one about the fish.
The fish story.
The fish story. So when working for a transportation company once upon a time, their business development team was tasked with finding alternative sources of revenue beyond, kind of the transport. And so they were doing a lot of partnerships. So I think they were doing a good job for the most part. They were doing lots of partnerships with other transportation companies and kind of online partners who would help to surface their tickets in searches for, various types of transportation, e.g. trainline.com, that kind of thing. But then I learned this story that they basically partnered with a fish company to be a partial distributor for them. So they'd be transporting fish in the coach carriages where people's suitcases, etc., would be. I just found that really, really baffling. Like at the end of the day, how much revenue really was that generating? And is it really on brand? Is it really the goal and the focus of what this company is trying to do, which is make transportation easier and more accessible for hundreds of people?
I'd need to translate this one to American. So in the luggage compartment of buses, of long haul buses, they were transporting fish next to suitcases.
As an alternative source of revenue, and I just found that really insane. And obviously there was a clear goal there, and having seen some of the other things the team did, they understood the goal. But what happens where that particular choice was made? What were the controls that were not in place? So I've talked about kind of a lack of trust existing in companies, but sometimes we do need to have guardrails in place when we give our teams goals and we set our strategy and we set them goals. We do need to kind of put some guardrails around that kind of, what are we and what are we not?
Yeah.
Because otherwise you get things like we're transporting fish in our coach carriages, right?
I mean, I kind of think it's genius at the
Genius.
same
Yeah,
time.
yeah, you're right. Is it genius or is it folly? I actually don't know with this one, but I just found it hilarious.
Yeah.
So if we're going to do root cause in this, what caused this? This is where the metric becomes the target, right? It has nothing to do with actual, is this the right thing to do? It's just more partnerships, and revenue from partnerships is the only goal.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and not necessarily, like you say, on brand, on mission maybe?
On mission,
Um,
it's revenue at all costs, and we kind of forget about what is our brand, what is our mission, what is actually our strategy, because I'm sure the strategy didn't mean that. So how do we, when we do set strategy for our teams, how do we set the appropriate guardrails for them? So I've always liked the kind of even over approach to setting principles. So we'll choose this even over this kind of thing instead. We'll do this, but not at the expense of this. So having that kind of conversation in teams when we're talking about our strategy helps our teams to go, okay, this is the goal, but we know that there are boundaries within which we can operate as well.
yeah, makes a lot of sense. And I think there's probably a lot of examples of that in probably less extreme ways of salespeople just going off the rails and just selling whatever they think they can get away with selling, and then
Yeah.
coming back to business and going, "I've sold this, quick, we need to build it," or, "We need to fulfill this," or whatever, so
Yeah. And it's not, this isn't just a domain of big companies and large organizations. I've worked in small founder-led organizations where there is a strategy, or the beginnings of a strategy, and then the next shiny new bid comes along, or the
Mm.
next customer who is really big and is really kicking up a fuss is like, oh, but we would really like to do this thing. And so you find that the organization starts to stray away from the thing we said is our area of focus to the shiny new bid that we should go for, or this big thing that this particular customer is going to pay us a lot for. But in the end, it's kind of like it's going to cost us in the long run, because it's moving us away from our strategy. We're trying to build a SaaS solution, but right now we're operating more like an agency.
Yeah.
And it's not, I don't think that it's the domain of purely large organizations where you start to see that kind of strain away from the what is the core of what we're trying to achieve, to kind of shiny thing here that kind of doesn't really fit with what we do at all.
It's a nice shiny fish.
Yeah, shiny fish.
KG, one of your other examples goes in the other direction. It was, as you said, we can have the conversation, about this over this. And one of the ways we do that sometimes formally is through checklists and forms and things like that. But those can also go very, very wrong. Tell us
Are you
about
talking
this.
about the document that had like 61 pages? Is that the
Yeah, I'm
one?
sorry. Not only 61 pages, you said it had 7 sections, but tell us about the last 2 sections.
Yes. So basically, sorry, I'm trying to find my notes on it. Yes. So there was a 61-page solution specification document. It had 7 sections in it. The sixth section and the seventh section fit at the bottom of the 61st page, right? And those sections were the success criteria section and the handover to service section. 61 pages. And they spent less than half a page on what the success criteria was. And oh, sorry, it actually didn't have anything in it. I'm just reading my notes on that. Yeah, it had nothing in it. And the handover to service section had 3 bullet points in a solution specification document. And so, you know, I've been in these companies where they have the fatigue of running projects that have failed multiple times. And then they put in processes, we'll do these retros of why has this thing failed? Why have we gone so over budget? Why have we just had to write it off completely? We'll do these retros and then we'll put in like new processes and there'll be new forms to fill in and all that. And I'm like, but let's go back to the fact that we did specify this. We spent 61 pages specifying this, and we didn't even put anything in the success criteria. And we
Mm.
had 3 bullets for how we handed that over into kind of into the business. This is the root cause. And why is that not being, why does that repeat again and again? Because we just put in new processes and the bureaucracy takes over the goal and the thing that we're trying to achieve. Like the bureaucracy becomes the reason for the thing. We can't do this unless we've written this document. We can't do this unless we filled in this form. But people go through the motions. They end up going through the motions of the thing rather than really doing the intent of the thing.
Yeah. Do you think as well that this could be another thing where, like, I've heard a lot about how Amazon work, and Randy, you probably know all about this because of your back in your Amazon days, where they pride themselves on these massive long PRD, like product requirement documents that they write that go into like really great detail about what they're building and why they're building it and all of that kind of stuff. And then I imagine similar to, as you were saying earlier, people like reading about the Spotify squad model where they're like, we must do this because Amazon do it and they're really successful. So this must be the way to work. I wonder how much of it is kind of to do with that.
Yeah, I think in some cases it is to do with that, except they missed the key point, which is that Amazon probably spends more time on the why we're doing the thing and what we're trying to achieve. And then the actual, solution specification bit is probably not the part that takes up the most of those documents. I think it's a bit that. I think it's also a bit where there is that kind of lack of product management capability and understanding where organizations work predominantly in
Mm.
project mode, and so they have these solutions architects and then they have the IT teams who are responsible for coming up with solutions, and so they need to have the BAs go off and do a bunch of systems mapping. And I'm not saying that these things aren't valuable, but those activities are the thing that take up the bulk of these documents. And so people get very invested in, we've got to specify the solution without really understanding the problem that they're solving or the goal.
Mm.
Like, and once we specify the solution, what's it going to achieve and how will we know that it's done that? They'll spend a lot of time in that space rather than spending the time on the problem space and the goal space and the outcome space. And so a lot of teams are invested in, well, this is how we work and this is what we do and this is my job and this, and I'm not having a go at people. This is absolutely the condition of the environment that they are working in. And so that's the thing that needs to change rather than, humans deliberately trying to do a bad job. No one's deliberately trying to do a bad job. In fact, all of these teams, everyone works really hard and they're super invested in trying to do good work. But the system is the thing that needs to be torn down. I'm getting a bit anarchic here, aren't I? Anarchist here.
Product people, are you ready? The word on the street is true. MTPCon London is back in 2025 We're very excited for Mind the Product's return to the Barbican next March.
Whenever I hear people talking about the best product conferences, Mind the Product is always top of the list. If you've been before, you know what's in store. Oh, that rhymes. New insights, strategies, hands on learnings from the absolute best in the field, plus great networking opportunities. And if you're joining us for the first time, I promise you won't be disappointed.
We've got one speaker already announced. That's Leah Taryn, who you've heard on this very podcast, with more to come from the likes of WhatsApp, the Financial Times, and Google. Real people working in the field who will share real, actionable insights to level up your game as a product manager.
Whether you're coming to the Barbican in person on March 10th and 11th or tuning in digitally, join us and get inspired at MTPCon London. Tickets are on sale now. Check out mindtheproduct.com/MTPCon to find out more, or just click on events at the top of the page.
How do we deal with that? So when you're in a role in an organization, you're in leadership roles these days, you want to provide the guardrails to make sure that people know what to do. They have need a certain amount of communicating prioritization and functional and non-functional requirements and things like that in the organization, making sure people are talking to each other and getting the right idea. But you also want them to have autonomy and trust to go. So how do you balance those and create an environment where people can succeed?
I always go back to the beginning and the first principles of this, which is we can't know what to do until we are sure about why we're doing it and what we're shooting for. And I think in a lot of organizations that is fundamentally missing. And so everyone's kind of trying to do their best, but they're rowing sometimes in the same direction and sometimes in different directions. And it's not that anything anyone is doing is wrong, but because they have a lack of clarity, it can then cause a lot of problems in organizations. So I'm always trying to, if I'm responsible for it, I'm trying to provide that clarity for teams. If I'm not responsible for it, I'm asking the questions to try and get to help me understand what is it that we're trying to achieve? What is our strategy? What's the vision? What is the goalpost that we're heading towards? And then we can talk about like how do we get there and work through that process. So that's one part of it. And I think a lot of the challenges a lot of organizations has stems from that, to be honest. That kind of lack of clarity about what it is we're actually trying to achieve and helping teams understand that. And the discipline around once we do have a clear idea of what that is, the discipline around not, running off to do the next shiny thing that that kind of crops up that doesn't align with what we said it is we want to do and achieve. Then the other part of it is, around helping teams build that capability. If we can set them in the right direction, tell them what our vision is, tell them what our goals are, and the strategy and the guardrails surrounding that, then how do we help build the capability to support them in doing that? How do we make sure they have the right tools to do that? It's all well and good saying that our team should go do discovery if we don't give them access to customers. And we've got parts of the business that are protective about teams having access to customers. It's all well and good saying that our team should be evidence and data driven, but we don't actually have the capability, the technical capability, the data structures in place to allow them to do that.
Mm.
So it's about giving the skills for the humans to be able to do the job, and then the environment and the tools for the humans to be able to do the job. And then I think the other part is like the culture and the safety around being able to fail. But that fundamentally means that you have to change the way you work from we do a thing, we get the thing out the door, and that's success. If we care about we get the thing out the door and then it has this impact, and this impact is a thing that we care about teams achieving, then we can create that space to allow teams to try different ways to achieve that thing rather than we've launched a thing or we didn't launch a thing and that's failed, or a project has failed and therefore it's failed. And I think a lot of the battle scars I've seen people in teams have and around that trust has been because of that perception of failure and how it's been received in the organization, and then how that manifests in all the ways that trust is not there. So, you've got to fill in all these documents and all the other myriad ways where it's clear that there's a lack of trust in the organization. Like that you've got to get to the root of.
Mm. So we've only covered a couple of your points. I think you're going to have to write like an article or something about all of the others because we've only got time for probably one or two more. But yeah, what other of the crazy things?
Yes, I was
Yeah.
gonna say, should we do the calendar one?
So this is like such a pet peeve of mine, but yeah, like talk to us about calendars.
Yeah. When I wrote this one down, I wrote it down as the one where Google doesn't know what they're doing. And by that, I mean, you've got Google, pretty big company, it's created a calendar system where, we all get the visibility of each other's calendars so you can see the availability of people when you need to have a meeting with them. And then in organizations, they tend to put their kind of rooms and stuff like that in there as well. So you can look for the person you want to talk to, check their calendar, see their availability, and then see what rooms are available. And you book a meeting with a room. Boom, done, right? Simple. Except in this organization, they didn't do that. If you wanted to book a meeting with a meeting room, you had to email reception and tell them when you wanted to have a meeting, who you wanted to have a meeting with, and then they would book a meeting for you and find you a room. Except they then didn't update Google Calendar with that meeting or the room either. So then you'd end up in this back and forth with them about all the different people you wanted to have a meeting with and what rooms were available. I was just like, how many hours of an organization's life is spent in this process that I'm having right now with this with this reception? I've probably spent a good day, kind of over the course of a day, at least 30 minutes of my time, maybe even more, going back and forth, just trying to
Mm.
organize a meeting with some people when there's literally a system that allows us to do this. I never did get to the bottom of why that was. Like, there's going to be some kind of organizational trauma that's happened. Why someone was like, "That's it, we're locking down Google calendars and all the meeting rooms," and so everyone has to go through reception. Something happened, and I never got to the bottom of what it is. But it did make me think about, in particularly in large organizations where you have these little sinks of people's time and effort and motivation, and that's happening in that happened to me in a microcosm. Now just multiply that by like all the people who've had that experience in the organization and how much demotivation that creates, how much waste and inefficiency that creates.
Mm.
It's just about how organizations end up in this place where they put in these like processes to have some kind of control over something, and there will have been something that made that happen. But how do you help organizations shift away from that? I'm not sure that I have the answers to that one, because I think all different types of organizations have their version of that. Kind of, there's another one that I kind of had heard recently where there's a team member who's part of a project and basically is 2 days of their week on this is spent on this project, and all they do in those 2 days is sit in meetings.
Mm.
Some of those meetings, yes, they might have something that they're contributing. In a lot of those meetings, they're just a kind of silent participant. That's 2 days of someone's week. They feel they're not adding value, and how many of that kind of person exists in particularly large organizations? It's not. It's cray cray. Like I said, it's batshit cray cray.
And I wonder how much of this is as a result or a consequence of businesses growing really quickly and then not adapting their processes and their tools for the size of organization that they are, and then just throwing people at the problem.
Yeah, I think that happens a lot where, yeah, the speed of growth overwhelms a company's ability to kind of keep up with it. Often, yeah, you see throwing people at a problem a lot of the times, but I think I've observed is throwing process at the problem a lot of the times. So it's just, okay, something's not going right, so let's put in a very rigid process so that we can be sure that it will go right next time, and we can see every aspect of it that's going on, and it just introduces more complexity. And then the next time something goes wrong, it's like, okay, but we all need to get together and come up with a new process for how we solve this thing, and which introduces another layer of complexity where perhaps maybe we just need to take away some of the layers of process rather than
Yeah.
introducing more.
And I think, possibly like applying a sort of product mindset to it, it almost feels like operational debt or, technical debt, but it's
Yeah,
operational debt.
operational, exactly, exactly. And it's just, it's it's overwhelming. And when you go into organizations like that, it can be overwhelming to even start to have the conversation. Like, where do you even start to have that conversation? Even figuring out which department is responsible for
Mm,
putting in that process so that you can try and have a conversation with them about it can be particularly overwhelming when you enter a large organization. And I think it can kind of wear people down, and people just
mm,
accept it, but everyone's a bit worn down by it. And it's hurting organizations' productivity, and it's damaging people's sense of autonomy and, feeling like they're grown ups sometimes in the
mm,
workplace. Yeah.
So, KG, there's two ways of looking at this.
Hmm.
One is that companies are just absolutely batshit cray cray, as you say. The other is I find this strangely reassuring because I've seen this stuff too, and I'm sure most of the people listening have seen this stuff too. So it's not you. This is dynamics of organizations at scale. This is a lot of very logical, smart choices that got added up and turned into cruft of organization that don't make any sense anymore. But it's not. We're not nuts, right? With this stuff really does happen in lots of places. We're all nodding our heads together about this.
Yeah, absolutely. We're not nuts. It happens everywhere. Everyone's probably got, their version of this list somewhere. And ultimately, there's not, in organizations, there's not some evil council sitting there going, how can we make things so batshit cray cray for everyone? Like, no one is sitting there going, how can we make work really difficult for everyone else? Everyone is there genuinely trying to, make things better in some way. These things manifest not because people are trying to do bad stuff. They manifest because people are trying to do good stuff. But what happens is our fear gets in the way, that lack of trust pervades because we've had a few things go wrong. There's that fear of failure. So how do we help organizations move past this? Well, I think one is acceptance. As organizations get big, things just get a little skewy. And there are going to be examples of things like this. The second is having empathy for kind of the place that everyone's coming from, which is that no one's deliberately trying to make me feel like I'm going crazy in an organization. No one's doing that. So how do we do it? We have one conversation at a time. So, like, that example that I gave you about the Jira board, like, I had many conversations about that bloody Jira board, many conversations. And then I found the nut that cracked it, which was just helping them kind of understand that you trust these people. You don't not trust these people. You trust them. You trust them every week when they release something, and you trust them with like the most important thing, which is the money, right? They release a thing. If it fucks up, that's like money that you're seeing not being made. So if you trust them with that, how can you not trust them with this? And it was that was the thing that got through in the end. I probably said it in more diplomatic terms than that at the time, but that's the thing that got through in the end. But I did like knock my head against a wall for a while, just trying to get to the bottom of that problem. And so there was that problem. I solved that one. Did I solve the Google Calendar problem in that organization? I did not. And you pick your battles. Which are the battles that are gonna be most impactful, and how do you bring people along on that journey with you? So, I've been in organizations where they didn't think that discovery and research was an important thing, and that was a battle worth fighting. So you figure out the ways to influence people, to convince people, to bring them along with you, to demonstrate, to kind of show them. I think we ended up doing some research. We went off and talked to some customers. We did some guerrilla testing, and then we came back and we talked to people and showed them the evidence of that. And it was like, oh yeah, this does really make sense. We don't know the customers, and we started to win that battle. So it's just figuring out kind of what are the things that are the most important, what are the things that are going to be the most impactful. You're not going to win you're not going to fix all the cray cray, but fix the most important bits of the cray cray, I think.
yeah.
And the only way you do that is by talking to people and getting and having empathy for like where they're coming from. Why do you and being curious, doing our products, putting our product hat on, being curious, like why is it like this? Help me understand. Tell me who was scarred. Who was scarred once that made this thing, that made this decision happen. Having that curiosity hat about why a thing exists rather than railing against the fact that it does exist, I think can be a sanity engine when you're in this when you're faced by these kind of what seem to be crazy things.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting about all of this is when we come at these problems, these kind of operational problems with a product mindset, like we're so well equipped to deal with it and prioritize, like you say, choose your battles, empathize with the situation, ask the right questions, and basically just hang on to the things that really matter and don't give up until you've got
Exactly.
a good outcome. But yeah, like Randy said earlier, it is really great to hear that everyone goes through these sort of struggles. And, like you said, these examples are from big organizations, but I have seen some cray cray, batshit cray cray stuff happening in small organizations too. But thank you so much, Keiji. It was so nice chatting to you today, and it was quite cathartic. So yeah, it was good. It was good going through some of those examples.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm glad that we made it happen. I know it's been in the works for a while, and I'm glad that the topic resonated. I wasn't sure when I was thinking up my topic if it was something that people would identify with, but I'm glad to hear that I have
I
not been the only one.
guarantee you, Keiji, people will identify with this episode.
Yeah, no, it's been great to talk to you both.
The product experience hosts are me, Lily Smith, host by night and chief product officer by day.
And me, Randy Silver, also host by night. And I spend my days working with product and leadership teams, helping their teams to do amazing work.
Luran Pratt is our producer, and Luke Smith is our editor.
And our theme music is from product community legend Arnie Kittler's band, POW. Thanks to them for letting us use their track.